All right. Thank you so much, Toby. Um, okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'll share my screen now, and we would continue. See. Okay, please confirm you can see my screen.
Oh, yes, I can see your screen.
All right. So today's session is actually a continuation of what we started Monday, right? So we're talking about data transformation with Power Query. So I've already been introduced. If you still haven't gotten the data set, or if you're just joining today for the first time, this is the link. You can copy this link and you'll get data set to continue with what we are doing. If you're on the Slack channel, you should have had this data set and should have worked on it based on the last class. Okay, so the agenda still remains the same. We are trying to bring in data from multiple sources, clean profile, learn a few things about data cleaning and how we can use Power Query to do that. And on Monday, we started with a case study, which is, okay, let's assume we are trying to create a sales report for a firm, and we've been provided with this set of data, right, in different file formats, different tables here and there. And what we want to do is to take those data sets, the text file, CSV file, this table, that table, mash it up together and create a nice data model that we can build our reporting over. So I would open my Power BI now. So we'll briefly go over what we've done. Okay, so this is Power BI open now. So we want to go into the Power Query editor. So how do we do that? We go to Home and click on Transform Data under this queries group here. I'm going to click on Transform Data. It's going to open Power Query Editor. So when it opens Power Query Editor, we'll look briefly at what we have done so far as it relates to the task of bringing in data from those multiple sources, cleaning it and making it suitable for the analysis that we want to do. All right. So what did we do on Monday? We had 3 files that contained sales information across 3 years, across 4 years, but in 3 separate files, right? And then we brought in each of those text files, CSV file, Excel files, right? We walked through a little bit of the data profiling, data types, how data types impact what you can do. Okay, so we brought in the sales for 2017, brought in 2016, 2015. We did the right data types for the dates, and we brought in sales 2014. And then we took those 3 data sets and we appended them on each other to produce one single sales table, which we are going to load into our data model. And then we also connected to a customer table, which was part of the data set provided. We did a bit of transformations. We promoted headers. We splitted, the location column, which we had, splitted it across the city, state, and the country. We did a little bit of trimming to make sure that we didn't have any trailing or leading spaces. And we also confirmed the data type. And then from our sales table, we talked about how we can break out those information that relate to the products, break them out into one single table and just have a table that contains the information for our product, just like we have done for our customers, and then just keep only those columns we can use to link back those products and customers, so that when we see a sale transaction right in our data for our sales table, we can always just use those IDs to link back to more information about that customer or about that product. Okay, so that is where we stopped on Monday. We are going to proceed from there now. So if we look back into the data set that was provided, okay, let's go to data. Yeah, so if you look there, we had sales information which we had worked with. We have a customer database which we had brought in, and then we also have some additional tables. Okay, so we are going to bring in these additional tables and see what we have in there. So if you remember correctly, how do I bring in new data? I just come to home, new source. Since it's an Excel workbook, I'm going to click on Excel workbook. And it's asking me where do I have data. I'm going to navigate, select additional tables, click open. Right, so it's going to create a connection to the additional table, try to read all of the data that we have in the additional in that workbook. Look for the worksheets. If there are tables, look for it. If there are named ranges, look for it. So it has done that and it has found two tables. One is the return orders. If I click on that, I get a preview of what I have there. And another one is a salesperson table. So I'm going to bring in both of them by just checking the boxes that I have beside there, and I'll click on OK. So it's going to import those two tables. As you can see on the right here, I have returned orders and I have sales person. Okay, so let's look at the returned orders first. So what this returned orders table is that, okay, we have different records of sales or different records of orders in our sales table, but some of those orders were returned. So which means that even though that order has been placed, has been delivered, we didn't actually make money, right, from that sale. So that means if we are going to be calculating, okay, how many units have we sold, for example, or what is the profit or what is the sales amount we made from a particular sale, we need to remove those orders that have been returned. So luckily for us, we are provided with a list of orders that have been classified as they were returned, right? So this is the returned orders table. And if you look at the bottom, we have 297 rows telling me that, okay, 297 orders were returned. And then for the salesperson table, which we brought in, we also see that we have two columns here, the person and the region. So for each region where a sale was made, there is a salesperson that is in charge of that region. So we need to do some transformations and add these modifications to our sales table. So let's start with the returned. Let's start with the salesperson, since that one is a little bit easier to work with. So we brought in the salesperson table. As always, like I said last time, first thing is check what's the query name. Power Query named it salesperson. I think I'm fine with that. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay. So Power Query named the salesperson. That's good. Let's see the steps that has been taken. Source, okay, it navigated to the workbook, selected the salesperson, and then change type. So if you look closely at the data, you see that the first row is actually the headers for that table. So person supposed to be a header, region supposed to be a header, and these are the values in that column. So I'm just going to delete what Power Query has done because Power Query did not know that those were headers. So I'm going to delete that, and then I'm going to make those first row headers. How do I do that? I just click on this icon I have beside the header here, and then I'll go to select use first row as headers. So when I did that, again, they were promoted as headers, and then an automatic change type was also added, which is fine. We have our salesperson table. Let's go to the sales table itself. And if you scroll through the sales table, I think I removed it during the last class. There is a column called region. So I removed it by mistake. We can always reverse it. How do we reverse it? On the applied steps here, you see that there's a step called remove other columns where I selected the columns I wanted to keep in the table. I'm just going to click on that little gear icon that I have there. And when I click on that, it's going to bring up this box that shows me where I made my selection. And then I'll check region that, okay, I want to include the region back in my selection. I click OK. All right. Then I'll scroll through and see where I have the region. So I have the region where the sales was made. What I want to do now, so I have two options, right? With this region column, I can use this region column to link back to the salesperson table and say, okay, match this region in this column with the region in the sales column, right? So I can determine which salesperson was actually supposed to be responsible for the sales in this area. But what I want to do instead is I don't want to use the region column, right? I want to add like a new column where I can use that to do the match. Sorry. So I'm going to go to the salesperson column and I just want to add like a salesperson ID, like just like a number that says, okay, this is ID1, ID2, ID3, ID4, because we're not provided, just to make it easy to trace. I want to just provide a little sales ID, okay, ID1, ID2, ID3. So query, call that adding an index column, right? I'm just going to add, give me a sequential list of numbers. So I want to add a column. I go to add columns. Pretty easy, right? I go to add columns and then you see an option that says index column. I will not click on index column. I'll click on the drop down beside index column, and I have two options: create an index column from 0 or create an index column from 1. That basically just means what should be the first number in the sequential numbers that are going to be created. This 0, 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3. All right. So I'm going to say, okay, I want from 1, and a new column is added to my table. That's all right. I'm going to rename the column and call it maybe salesperson ID, for example. I'll say salesperson ID. Okay, so this is just a little way to create an ID column that was not existent in my table. Now, with this salesperson ID column in this table, I need to now take this salesperson ID column and insert it into the sales table so that I can now use the salesperson ID column that would be in the sales table to link back to this salesperson. So I'm going to go to the salesperson table. So if you've used Excel before to do analysis, this is similar to something like a VLOOKUP, right? I want to say, okay, VLOOKUP, what am I looking for? Take this column here that I have in this region, right? And match it in the sales table. Anywhere you see a match, bring back this column from me. Okay, so we don't have VLOOKUP in Power Query. Instead, what we have is what? Merge, right? So we want to merge queries. So we talked about append queries on Monday, which is just basically stacking queries or tables on each other, right? So A, stack B under it, stack C under it, stack D under it. But when you're talking about merging, you're trying to do like a join, a VLOOKUP kind of operation. So I'm going to come to home and I'm going to see merge queries at the right hand side under the home tab. I'll click on merge queries, right? And I'll say, it asks me, okay, I have the sales table. What's the second table I want to merge to this table? I'm going to select the salesperson query or table. Now, how do I link these two tables and know that this is the column you should use to do the join? I'll select the region here and I'll select the region here. So once I do that, I see a preview under here that, okay, the selection matches 9994 of 995 of 9994 rows. That means all of the tables actually found a match. And that means that I don't have a region in my sales table that does not exist in my salesperson table. Okay, so I have seen 4 regions in my salesperson table. There are only 4 regions as well in my sales table, and that's good news. So I'll click on OK, and then Power Query is going to do the merge. And then if I look at each row now, I'm not going to click on the text table, just click by the side. I'll see a preview of the row from the salesperson table that matched to this region. So this one was actually in region West, and this is the salesperson. Good. The only thing I want to retain from this salesperson table is the salesperson ID. All right. I'm going to click on that salesperson column again, and then you see this icon I have here that looks like, I call it a T junction. All right, so it just basically means to expand. So I'm going to click on that expand icon, and then I'm going to select only the column I want to expand from that salesperson table. I'll say, okay, I only want salesperson ID, and it says, do I want to use the original column name as prefix? In this case, no. I don't want it to always add salesperson ID. I just want salesperson ID, and I'll click OK. So it has expanded that table, and then it has only retained that salesperson ID that I created in the sales table. So with this ID now, I can make a connection to the salesperson table and say, okay, this sale was done in this region and was by this person. All right. So that is one of the tables treated. The second one now is the returned orders. All right. So let's first look at what Power Query has done as well for the returned orders. The query name, I'm fine with returned orders. Look at the source, okay, navigated to the workbook, selected the returns orders table, and then did a change type step. Meanwhile, I want to have one step before the change type. So I'm going to delete this change type, and I'm going to promote the first row as headers. I'll select this, and then I'll choose first row. So that icon at the top right of the table there. So I've promoted the first row as headers. That's done the change type. I'm fine with the data type it has chosen. Text, not bad. All right. So what I want to also do now again is also another merge, right? So I have a list of sales ID of other IDs that were returned, and I want to use that list to find the rows in my sales table that I'm going to remove. Okay, so the only way is like almost like a VLOOKUP as well. I'm saying, okay, VLOOKUP, search for, if I go to the sales table now, I'm saying, okay, take this other ID I have in the sales table, look for it in the return orders table. If you find a match, just tell me that yes. If you don't find a match, you know, that means you won't bring anything for that table. And then I know that, okay, only those ones that I found a match there are supposed to be what? Removed from this table. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my sales table and I'm going to do another merge. And I'll come to the home tab. At the right, I'll select merge queries. And this time around, I'm going to be merging the returned orders. Now the column I'm going to use to merge this time is my order ID against my order ID. And then it's going to give me an estimate that, okay, out of the rows and I have my sales, 800 actually match in this return. So 800 transactions or 800 sales values that were done or sales records in my sales table that were actually part of an order that was returned. So why we have 800 rather than the 270 something plus we had is because our sales table contains, okay, this is an order ID, and then a single order might contain more than one product. All right, so if you have an order that had 4 products in the sales table, you have 4 rows for that order. So that's why you don't have a one-to-one match as the number of rows there. So I'm going to click on OK, and like we saw earlier, we get a match, right? Now, if I click on this, it says that what this table is empty, and that already signifies to me that what that order was not returned. Let me see if I can find one that was returned. So you see a preview. So this is one that was returned, right? So by the time I expand this column now, let's see. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to select that expand. And I'm just going to bring in the returned column, whether yes or no. Okay. And I'm going to select OK. So you see, I have null in some places and then I have yes in some places. Where I have yes, it means that those columns are, those orders are returned. And where I have null, those orders are valid. Now, just like you would do a normal filtering operation, whether in Excel or in any other tool, I can also filter out those yes columns. Okay, so I'm going to click on this drop down I have on the returned column, and I'm just going to uncheck yes. So that means I'm taking out where that returned column is yes, and I'll click OK. Right now, I have filtered out those columns that are returned. I may not go through the entire thing, but Power Query is actually going to perform that operation when it is time to load the data into the data model. I've brought in my salesperson table. I've created the join I need to create between the salesperson ID and my sales. I have also removed the returned orders table, which is very good. Now I can now do another cleaning operation on my sales table and say, okay, I've done all these merges, I've brought in these columns. Let's see the columns I actually need for my analysis. I'm going to, while I'm still on the sales table, I'm going to go to home. I'm going to go to choose columns, just like we did on Monday. I'm going to go to choose columns and I'm going to see, okay, what are the columns that I actually need now? Now here, I won't need my region again because I have my region as part of my salesperson table. So I'm going to uncheck that. And then what else? What else? What else? I don't need the returned column again because it's basically null at this point, right? So I'm going to uncheck that as well. And I'll click OK. And then you see another step get added, removed other columns. So now I have all the valid columns that I need. If I want to do any reordering, maybe I don't like the salesperson ID being at the last, I can drag it to the front. It doesn't have any impact, okay, on when you load it to the data model, whether this will be one way or another. It really doesn't matter. This is just maybe to help you think through what you're trying to do. Okay, so we've brought in those tables. Let's now see which ones we are going to load into the data model. My return orders table, I'm not going to be loading it. It has done the work it needs to do, but I can't delete it because I need it to be present when the other transformations occur. So I'm just going to move it to my helper queries folder that I created. So I'll right click, okay, and I'll select move to group, and I'll go to helper queries. And as I move it there, I also need to disable it from being loaded into the data model. So I'll right click on this and I see an enable load, and I uncheck that. And then when you see the italics on it, you know that that table is not going to be loaded. But for my salesperson table, I'm actually going to need to load it so that I can create that connection between my salesperson table and my sales table. Okay, so let's just look at our sales table. Can we enrich our sales table with some more information that could be relevant to the analysis that we want to do? Okay, so I'm going to scroll through and see, okay, I have some other ID, I have some dates, I have order dates and ship dates. Would it be nice to see how long does it take to deliver an order? Okay, that's one thing we can look at and create. I'm going to scroll down also as well. I see that I have a discount, right? Okay, maybe I should create a discount amount column to see, okay, for this order, what was the amount of discount that was actually given. So we're going to add those two columns. So we're going to calculate the discount amount, and we're also going to calculate the number of days it took to deliver that order. So what we want to do is what? We want to add a new column. So I'm going to go to add column, and then we'll create the discount amount column first. I would select, so how do I create my discount amount? This discount is basically percentage. So 0.2, I'm talking about 20%. 0.6, I'm referring to 60%. I would select the discount column, hold my control key, select my sales column. And then what I want to do is what? Multiply. I'll go to add columns, and then I'll just go to standard where I can perform basic arithmetic operations. And I'll select multiply. And I click multiply, a multiplication is carried out with those two columns, and then I get the discount amount. I would double click on the header of that column, and then I'll name it, yeah, and then I'll name it discount amount. All right, so that is my discount amount. Let's also add a new column to it and call it our what's it called now, delivery days, right? Delivery days. So I have my ship dates, I have my order dates. My delivery days is basically what? The number of days between an order and a shipment. So I would select my ship date first, hold control, select my order date. I'll go to add column, and then I see this group here where I can do options relating to date. I click on date, and then I see an option that says subtract days. So that's just going to give me what is the number of days between these two dates for these two columns. I select subtract days, and then immediately a column is added to me, added to the table that shows me the number of days between those two columns. We can confirm if Power Query did what we actually want, right? Let's look at the first row. So 9th of June to the 14th of June. How many days is that? 14 minus 9 is what? 5. That's good. Maybe you wanted to include the, what's it called? Maybe you wanted to include one more day. So if I have 9th to 14th, which is 5 days, I want to add one more to make it 6. You can do that, right? But we're not going to save it, but let me just show you what you can do. Now you can select the subtraction day, and I'll go to, this time around, no, I don't want to add a new column. I just want to modify this column a little bit. I'll go to transform, I hope this works, and then I go to standard, and I'm going to click add, and it's going to ask me what number do I want to add to this column. I just want to add 1, and I'll click OK, and then you see I get one more number, I get a value basically added to that column. So far we've done a lot of transformations, we've not written any code, but this may not really be necessary in our case. I'm just going to remove that step that I added to it. Okay, yeah, just going to remove that. So, and then I'm going to rename the table, the column, which is our delivery days. You can see it. Let's click on it, and I'm just going to call it delivery days. All right. So we've enriched our what's it called now? We've enriched the data set with some more columns that we can use for analysis, because now before we just had order and delivery dates. If we wanted to do any analysis around, okay, what's the average time it takes us to deliver an order, or what's the average time this particular customer has received an order for, what's the average time it takes to deliver this kind of product. If we didn't create this column, we won't be able to do that calculation. So adding columns like this gives you the ability to helps you enrich your data set and gives you the ability to do more analysis. Okay, so we have basically done most of the key tables that we need: sales, customer, product, salesperson. We've done the transformations. Everything is looking good, but there is, when it comes to data analysis and business intelligence reporting, there is almost no analysis they are going to do. They are not going to say, I want to look at something across time. It is almost impossible, right? For you not to say you want to do an analysis, you want to look at a metric or a value and not say, okay, how has this value evolved over time? All right. So that means as we're also going to analyze by customer, by product, by salesperson, by sales region, we also need to analyze across time. And to do that, when I mean time, I'm talking about dates, right? So to do that, we will need to add a date table. Now, for some of us, we already be familiar with maybe we've used Power BI before. You've seen someone do Power BI, and then you've seen them create maybe their data table. They've created it in DAX, or they just have one table somewhere that they imported from an Excel workbook. All of that, right? In I think maybe class day 2 or day 3, we went through an exercise of creating a date table using Power Query. We are going to do that again, but I'm just going to try, right, to use as little you won't need to write too much coding, right? You need to write too much code to generate your date table. So what we want to generate date table based on? First off, before we generate the date table, there is one key characteristic the date table must always have, right? So if I'm working with a data, in this case, our data set spans 2014 to 2017. Your date table must always contain dates as span from the beginning of that year, which is the 1st of January 2014, till the end of that year, which is to the end of the date period, basically, which is in this case the 31st of December 2017. All right. So what we need to do now is to find a way to create that date table that spans from the 1st of January 2014 to the 31st of December 2014. And this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to right click on my sales query, and I'm going to say reference, right? So not to duplicate now, reference. I just reference the output of that column. And then for my date table, or the dates I want to consider in my calculation, is only going to be my order date, right? So I'm going to select my order date. I'll right click on it, and I'll remove every other column apart from my date. Okay, so I have my order date now. I'm going to do a little bit of transformation and say, okay, transform this date to where it is the 1st of the year, the starting date of the year. So I select date, go to transform. Side here, I click date, year, and I select start of year. It transforms all my dates to the starting of that year. If you look at it, if I go to previous time, you see here I have 9th of June 2014, 11th of May, 13th of May. And once I performed that operation, everything just became 1st of January 2014. And then with that now, I'm now okay. Now do an extra transformation and say, while I'm still selected on the date, go to transform, select date, and say give me the earliest date. Okay, so it's going to give me, okay, out of this range of dates, what is the earliest date? And the earliest date is 1st of January 2014. So this is our starting date. I'll rename this query and I'll call it start. Or let me not do that here. Let me do one more thing first, so it makes it a little bit easy. Let me do one more thing first. So I've removed the earliest date operation that I performed. I'm going to select the date column again, and this time around I'm going to change it to a number. So it is dates now. I'm going to change it to a number, and then I'll show you why we are changing it to a number just in a second. So I'll go to transform, or no need to go to transform basically. While I'm on the dates column, this little icon here, I'm going to change the data type to a whole number, right? And then you see this weird number 41,640. You're wondering what it is. Now, if you've gone through the second class we had, which was on the Excel dashboard, you're probably familiar with this. But just to give us a little bit of context, I'm going to open an Excel file, and then we'll see how dates are handled within Power Query, Excel, Power BI, right? And some other systems, but we'll just limit it to this. And then when we look at how dates are handled, you understand why we had that, what's it called now, those numbers. Okay. All right, so let me zoom in a bit, and I'm just going to type into this date. Okay, I type into this date, and you see a date. Obviously, I'm going to change the formatting. I'll go to home, date, and I'm going to date, for example. All right, so I typed in the date, and then it's showing me the full date. You see a date. I can change this date to look anyhow I want, right? I can change the formatting, and I have something like this, for example, right? 10th of August. Okay, I showed you one that I just changed it to a full date, right? But one thing you should know is that dates inherently in Excel, in Power Query, in Power BI are actually numbers. And how can I prove that to you? If I remove the formatting, I'm just going to select that cell, and I'll change the formatting, home tab, number format, select general, and see what I have. I have a number. Right? So every date is actually a number. What is that number? The number is basically the number of days since the 31st of December 1899, right? So first of January 1900 is actually number 1. 2nd of January 1900 is actually number 2, and the list continues on till this day. If you don't believe me, watch this. I'm going to come here. I'll just press 1. I'll hit enter. Everybody sees number 1, right? I'll select the cell. I'll go to my number formatting again, and I'll change it to long date. And see we have what? Sunday, the 1st of January, 1900. So every date is actually a number. So when we did that transformation in Power Query, right, we're just basically changing the equivalent of that date into a number so that we can use it to perform a much more simpler expression to generate our date table. I'm going to minimize this, and then you've seen what I did before. I referenced sales table. I removed other columns. I transformed that table to the start of the year, right? So everything just give me 1st of January. I've transformed it now to a number, okay? And then I'm just going to still go to transform. Statistics, not statistics. Now statistics give me the minimum. So this minimum is still the same thing as what we had before, right? This is the equivalent, the number equivalent of the 1st of January 2014. Okay, so I'll rename the query to start date. Even though you see a number, just work with me. And I'm going to repeat the same process for the what's it called, for the end date, right? So I'll go to my sales table, right click, reference, create a reference, order date, select, right click, remove other columns. Okay, change the data type to what? Whole number. Oh no, too fast. I'm going to close that. Select that, go to transform, date, year, end of year this time around, and you see that this will get transformed to 31st of December 2014. Change the data type to whole number, and then while the date is still selected, transform, statistics, maximum, and this is going to be the equivalent, the number equivalent of the end of 2017, because that's the last date we have in our sales table. So this number actually is the same thing as the 31st of December 2017. So I'll query what end date. Okay, so I have my start date, I have my end date. I'm going to move them to my helpers query, select them, hold control, select this one as well, right click, move to group, and I'm going to move it to helper query, and I see it under that folder just for arrangements basically. So now I have my start date, I have my end date. I'm just going to create a list of numbers from that start date to that end date. So I need a blank query. They have two ways. Go to new source, okay, then select blank query, or anywhere in this query pane, look for an empty space, right click, new query, blank query, and then I get an empty query to do whatever it is I want to do. So now I want to create a list of numbers, right? I start by typing equals to. Now the way we represent a list in Power Query is by putting them in curly brackets. I'm going to press my curly brackets, and I'm going to just give it my start date. Okay, start date. And because it's a number, because I generate a list of number, I just press two dots, right? And I say end date. Okay, so this is basically saying give me a number from start date end date, and everything's in the curly brackets, and I'll click enter. Okay, and then Power Query is going to take that value I have in my start date query, take that value I have in my end date query, create a list, and then I'm just going to take that list and convert it into a table. So while the list is selected, I'm under a new transform tab that relates to just list, and I see at the top right here I have to table. So I'm going to convert that list to a table. Do I have any delimiters? None. I'm just going to click OK. So now I have a list of numbers. These numbers don't make sense yet, right? Let's see what happens when we change the data type. So I'll click on the icon here, and I'll select date, and then see what the date value of these numbers will see actually mean. And then we see a running list of dates. 1st of January, you see it runs like that up till what's it called? Up to 2017. If you want to be sure where it ends, I can select the filter icon here, and I say sort in descending order to see what the last date is, whether what we needed was actually created. And say that the last date is what? 31st of December 2017. Now we are happy. So I'm going to remove that sorted row step because we still need to perform some transformations before doing that. Okay, so I just went to the apply steps and clicked it out, and I'll rename this table first. Double click on the column header, date, enter. Then I want to enrich my date table, right? I'll select that, I'll go to add column, and then under this date here, I'm going to start first. I'm going to add my year. Just give me year, not start of year this time around. Just give me the year value, and then it gives me the corresponding year of that date. I'm going to continue, select my date table, go to add column, date, month, select months. That's going to give me the number equivalent of the months. If it's January, I get 1. If it's February, I get 2. March, 3, and so on. Go to dates. Again, select my date column, go to add column, select date, month. I'm going to give it the name of the month because I don't just want one. I want to see January, February, March. And for my analysis, right, maybe it might be too long to show January. I just want to see Jan, Feb, Ma, I don't know how to pronounce APR, but don't worry. So I'm just going to transform that column that was created a little bit, right, to just include the first 3 letters of that column. So I'll select my month name column, and I'll go to transform because I want to change the structure of that single column. I'll go to transform, and then I see text column group here, and I see extract. So I'll click on extract, and it says, okay, what kind of extraction do I want to do? I want to extract based on the length, the first characters, last characters, a range of values, Z before a delimiter, and so on. In this case, I just want the first X characters. I'll click on first characters. Ask me how many characters do I want to extract. I'll say 3. I click OK. And then I have Jan, Feb, March, and so on. Okay, so you see that. If I want to see the list I have there, I can select this filter icon here, and then try and gives me a preview of what I have there. Right? So you see that I have what I actually need. So I've created my date, year, month, and month name. I think we'll just work with this for now. I can rename the queries. Okay, so I want to rename this one. I said queries now. Yeah, I should rename my queries as well. So rename the query, call it dates. You can call it calendar, whatever you like. I prefer to call mine dates. actual dates, and once that runs, I'm going to rename this month column to month number. So double click. I'm going to call it month number, and then I'll rename this month name to just months, so that when I want to reference in my calculation and I say month, I get the actual text, and I'm going to call that month. So we've created our date table. Very sweet, very easy. I'm going to move it to my data model group. Right click on the date query, move to group data model, and then I'm going to disable this start date and end date as well from loading. You can see that they are not in italics, right? So I'm going to right click on it, disable from load, select the end date, right click, disable from load, and now I can just minimize this query and select anything I want here. So we've done the transformations from like different Excel tables, text files, CSV files, brought it together, mash it up, extract this from here, built up separate tables to represent our core data set, which are sales, our customers, products, salesperson, and we also even built a date table that, mind you, is actually dynamic based on our sales table, because if you remember, we reference sales and then we built up starting and end date from the order date column, which means that if this was a query that was that could be updated, right? If this was a query that could be updated, the moment I have new dates added to the sales table, my start date and end date would recalculate, and then the projection I have in my dates table would also be populated up to that point, right? The end of whatever new year I have. So I think, yeah, so we've covered all the transformations for the date table. I'm just going to hit close and apply, and it's going to load those new tables and the tables that we've modified. It's going to load them into our data model, right? So while that is loading, you can ask your questions because we are actually coming to the end of the session. Okay, so I'll be looking through the chat while this is loading. If you have any questions, kindly drop them in the chat. Okay. Seems there are no questions this time around. Maybe you guys don't understand what I'm doing, that's why there are no questions. But that's fine. Okay. So the tables I've loaded, Power Query has processed all the transformations that we did. And if you look at the fields pane here, we have new tables. We have our dates, we have our salesperson, we have our product. Now, a better way to look at this is to go to the diagram view, for example, which is the third icon I have on the left here. And then I would see all of the tables that have been imported into Power Query and what are the kind of relationships Power Query has tried to do, thinking it is, I say Power Query now, Power BI has tried to do, thinking it is smart, but it's actually smart. Okay, so let's see what we have here. We see a relationship between customer and sales based on customer ID. That's fine. We see a relationship based on product ID to product ID. Not bad. But then we see a relationship based on the region because we have the region in both columns. In this case, it's not supposed to be, but just take it for this example. So I'm going to right click on that and I'm going to delete that relationship because it actually shouldn't exist. The sales person is supposed to be connected to sales table, which we already have one here. Okay, and then the last thing will just be to connect this one to our sales table, right? So I'll just drag it to other dates, and then to create a connection. So in the next class, when we talk about data modeling, you understand what all of these lines that you're seeing actually mean. Okay, so do we have any questions? It could be about this session, it could be about Monday's session as well. Any questions? Let me see. Seems there are no questions. Oh,
Thank you so much, Bolaji. So
okay.
if thank you so much for the class. So if you have any question, you can raise your hands up. So do people complained about
For the lagging,
lag? Yeah, the lagging. I think I noticed that a bit.
I should have moved a little bit slower. I didn't know this. That would have helped.
No problem. The recording will be available. We'll try and make the recording available as soon as possible. So the organizers work on that, or technical team rather will work on that. So if you have any question, not just like Bolaji said, not just this class, maybe you've done something in the past, you're having issues, or maybe you dropped the question and it hasn't been answered. Though we tried our best to answer questions on the Slack channel as well, but if it hasn't been answered, any question at all, please you can raise your hand up so that you'll be given the mic to ask your question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just click on that yeah, that reaction with that and so with the raise of hand. So I think people thank you. So any question? We're also going through the chat. If you have any question, you can also drop in the chat if you don't want to raise your hand up. Okay, so I think we have Favor raising his hand up. I'll give him the mic.
Okay.
Okay, so Favor, you can ask your question. Okay, Fadila, please, once Favor, I think Favor, yeah, sorry, Favor. Once Favor is done, we'll give you the mic.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you, Balaji. Beautiful class. Thank you. Now my question, it's not from this current lecture. The last time we did Power BI practice, the first one we did was COVID-19 data, if you remember.
Yeah.
Okay. So my issue is I was able to do everything as described, but when it came to designing the reports, right, the measure for the death cases, when I tried to represent it in the report, it was not giving anything, it was not working. So on the charts, like in the table part, you see it's all blank. Part of it also our top 5 recovered cases. We have top 5 death cases. So those top 5 death cases, they are also blank. The death cases in the table also blank. So I tried, I think other persons even sent their own too on the Slack channel to complain about the same thing. So I'm not sure what we can do about it, please.
Okay. So the thing is, to actually answer that, I would need to like see what you've done to know where the error might be, right? So a couple of things that you could check is one, okay, do you have values in the table itself, right? Do you have values for the death cases?
The table, yes, I do.
Yeah. Okay. So you have values for the death cases, right?
Yes.
And you can confirm that the data type is correct, it's not text.
Okay, I'll have to go and confirm that.
Okay, so you need to confirm that, because if the data type is text, even though you are seeing numbers, right? If the data type is text, Power Query cannot perform any arithmetic on text. So if you've classified that column as a text, Power Query can't perform any arithmetic on it. You just get blank values. So confirm that the data type is text, not that it looks like numbers. Okay, what I mean by that is this. If I open my Power Query editor now, I think I showed this on Monday. Let me just show you again. If I go to this sales table now and I see this delivery days column, right? It's showing 1, 2, 3 here. that is telling me that this column is type whole number. The other type is whole number. Okay. If I select the icon and I select text, I'm still seeing numbers, right? If you look at it there, I'm still seeing numbers, but data type is what? It's text.
Text.
So if I do any calculation on this column, even if it's as simple as a sum, it's not going to work. It's just give me blank. Okay.
I will
All
check
right. So
that out.
confirm that the data type is correct. All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. So, Fadila, I'll give you the mic. Okay, can answer the question.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My
Yeah,
question
good
was
evening.
almost like related to his own, like almost the same thing though. But my own was
Okay.
I asked about. I was asking how I can get the recovered cases because it seems we are having your own different table that you got that from. Then I was referred to a link also that I can get it that it was there or something like that, but I could not get it. Number one. Did you get the question at all?
Yeah.
Okay, then secondly, the for this first data transformation class one,
Yeah.
the data sets we used, it seems it was on GitHub also. I was not able to get
Okay.
it. Yeah.
So the data set link, I think it is on the Slack channel as well. I'm just going to show it. The link is still the same thing, right? If you go to this link here, all right, let me just copy it. I'll answer the first question. I just want to show you this one quickly.
Okay.
And yeah, so if I open a browser and I just paste that in there, so I would see the files that are in that particular folder, right? And I can just select what I need and I click on download, and that file gets downloaded onto my system, right? So that's how you're going to get data sets. It's not in a GitHub.
I was not having this link. I'm not sure I have this link. This was not the link though, but I'm going to like copy it now. So.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
We'll paste the link in the chat now as well.
Okay, sir.
Oh, I've done
So
that. We have the
okay,
link there, so you can just copy it. Fadila. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. So I think it's self. Okay.
yeah.
So
For the
also just
hold on,
sorry
sorry,
that.
sorry.
All right.
So she asked a first question about the cases, right? Try and go through the videos again, and I think there was some other the what's it called? The Power BI file was actually provided as well. That Power BI file that was worked on in that class was provided as well. So you can open the file. If you've watched the videos, I still don't get it. Open the file, see what was done, okay, and see how it is different from what you have. You get. So that would also help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. I think we still have one more person raising up his hand. So while I'm trying to give, okay, we have to. You can also
Yeah.
check the. I think I'm seeing a question on the chat, Balaji.
Yeah, I can see it as well. So it says, I noticed that in the diagram view, some columns have the sum sign. So I'm going to go to diagram view. And I think this is what you mean, right? So the sales table, for example, scroll, you see the sum sign here. Does that mean anything? Yes, it actually means something. And this mostly happens when you have numeric columns in your table, right? So what Power BI is indicating is that if I drag this column without creating a measure, if I drag this column into a report or into a card visual or into a table, it is going to aggregate it rather than um, just list the values there. So what am I saying? If I come to the report now, I add a card, okay, and I drag in delivery days. to the field, it is going to try and do some kind of aggregation, right, on that field, basically. It's taking some time because I think I've used up a lot of resources on my system. So it's going to try and do some kind of aggregation on that system, as on that column rather. Another way to look at it is if I go to the data view and I go to my sales table and I click on any numeric column. Under column tools, you would see these properties here, right? See summarization, and the summarization is set to sum. So by default, anytime I drag this column into a visual, it will try and sum it. So that icon there is an indication that this column will, if you drag it to, I'm going to try and do some kind of aggregation or summarization on it. So that's what it means. Most times you won't be using that because you would create your own measures yourself. Okay, I hope that answers the question. Okay,
Okay.
so I think
Sadiq, yeah.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone.
yeah, good evening.
Thank you so much, Balaji.
Yeah, you're
I've
welcome.
learned so much. So
Right.
I don't have a question actually, but I think I have something that I could share that could help solve the problem field and the COVID-19 analysis. So in
All
the
right.
formula, the DAX formula, so when you are trying to calculate the death cases, so there is a place where you are subsetting you are using calculate function to subset what you are calculating for. So the death there is spelled as just death, but in the table, the death has an S. I think
Okay.
it was a mistake. Yeah. So if you just put the S in the formula, so it will help to like correlate it to what is in the table. So when you are calculating your measure will be able to see the table. But if the S is not there, it won't work.
Okay.
I had the same problem, and that's how I use. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that. I hope everyone on the call has heard. You can try it out as well on your data and see if that solves the problem. Thank you. Okay.
Thank
Do
you
we have
so much, Balaji. Okay, I think the last person is not around was Esther, but I can see presently she's on hold. She's not in maybe network or something else. So so with that, I believe we've come to the end of today's section. Okay, sorry, one more person, Elizabeth. Okay, so I'm giving Elizabeth the mic. Okay, Elizabeth, can mute. So.
Okay, good evening.
Yeah, good
Please
evening.
want to ask, is there another way I can generate calendar? I think the second class, I tried generating the calendar. I actually can't remember the point, but there was a point where to generate calendar from the onset and to the last, to up to date. I had issues generating the calendar. So I wouldn't know, maybe it was the code I typed in that was wrong. So is there another alternative to generate an up-to-date calendar?
So, okay, so when you say up to date, are you referring to like today in real time?
Yes, maybe, yeah, today in real time.
Yeah, okay, so let me just share my screen back. Okay. Now, if I go back to transform data, now depending on the method you use, one way or another, you would have to reference if you are doing it in Power Query and you want to create a date table in Power Query, one way or another, you have to reference a start date and an end date. Okay. Now, in the one I did now, I created the end date based on the last date I had in my data set. I could have as well, instead of having this end date, I could have said, okay, new query, create a blank query, and then use a function to get the time currently. And that function, I believe, is date time think it is, yeah, fixed local now, and it is a function that doesn't require any argument. And then it gives me the date and time as at this moment in time, and then I can change this to year, end of year, right? And this is the 31st of December of this point in time. So with okay, let me also change it to date only so it makes sense. So the only with the method I use now, or with whatever method I use, what would make your date to be up to date as of today would be whatever it is that you are using as your end date, right? So if this is my end date now, the only thing I'll just need to do is to go to my date table, for example, right? Okay, in this case, I use number, I'll convert it to number as well, and then go to my date table. And if I go to the source, right, this end date is the only portion that will need to change to the number equivalent of whatever today's date is. And at every point in time, my dates will always keep growing till the end. But the only one thing to mention there is that this date time dot fixed local now would always calculate every time you open Power Query, because it has to find out what is now. Now is a very specific point in time. It is down to the millisecond, I think. So it will always calculate every time. So if it's not a report that you most times the date table is always going to span the complete year, right? So if you can always find a way to determine what year it is, it could be better in terms of how long it takes for your query to load. That's just it. The key thing is what is the end date. Find a way to make the end date to always update at every point in time, and then every other thing works fine.
Okay, thank you very much. So you mean if I want to make it run through a column, I'll follow the same process and it will come out well?
Yes, it would. In this case, the only thing I need to make is to make this query instead of a date, to make it a number, right? Let me see if I can do that to show you. Okay, source date time dot local now calculates start of year. And I have to find a way around that. Okay, what I could do is convert it to a table. Okay, and then once I converted it to a table, change the data type to whole number, and then I'll right click on it and I'll drill down. And now it is a number, which is some number as at the end of this year. So this one will keep those are the as at the end of this year. Yeah, as at the end of this year. Okay, so what did I do? Date time was local now. I converted it to the end of the year. I extracted as only a date, converted it to a table, change the type to number, and then right click and drill down. And then if I substitute this query, one that I have here, into my dates table, let me just rename it to show you current date. And if I just come to my dates table source, and where I have end date here, I'm going to replace it with current date. Okay, now hit enter, so it's going to try and recreate everything that it has done. Okay, and if I sort this in descending order, you would see that the top date that we'll have there will be the 31st of December 2022. So by next year, this will grow into 31st of December 23. Am I still on, or is my network bad again?
Yeah, on. I was waiting for her to verify that she got what you're saying. So we're taking the last question now. We have a question from Esther. So Esther, you can unmute your mic.
Good evening, everybody. The question I wanted to ask, I would have loved if I was able to share my screen because I'm trying to connect with my laptop so that you can see what I'm trying to ask. It's about the last COVID data.
Okay.
But I don't know, my laptop is frozen.
But it can be difficult to open Power BI and Teams at the same time if you don't have
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes,
So
my
could
screen
you
does it.
instead describe what you're trying to do? Maybe we can help that way.
Okay, so
Mhm.
for the dashboard, when trying to build the dashboard, you in the video we're supposed to drag the when you are using the consolidated data, so we're supposed to drag the I think the cases or so to the filter button so that we can filter for each cases like the death recovered and um what's the last one? So for me it's not working. When I try to filter in one card, by the time I go to the next card and remove a filter and try to filter again, the first card is affected. I don't know how I'm going to
Okay.
share this.
So what I would say
Yes.
is, yeah, I get your question. What I would say is, if you can, on the Slack channel, take screenshots at each step, post it on the Slack channel, and describe what it is you're actually facing. Then we'll try to find a way to tell you what to do and fix that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any other question?
Okay, no other question. Just everybody sending gratitude for today's class, and I'm glad
Yeah.
everybody able to gain something.